Shalom and welcome to On the House, the podcast where industry experts and professionals discuss real estate in Israel. I'm your host, Debbie Goldfisher, real estate agent, founder and editor-in-chief of buyitinisrael.com. Join us as we explore market trends, legal and tax issues, purchasing tips, neighborhoods throughout Israel, and much more. All this is On the House, helping you make the right move. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for the third episode of our second season of On the House, which is dedicated to purchasing new construction in Israel. As we know, we've already spoken about how to select the right property, the right project, and the right unit. And today we're going to talk about understanding what we're buying. Before we go into the legal process and advance the transaction, we want to ensure that we understand what it is that we're buying on paper. For this episode, I brought in an experienced interior designer who does precisely this. Tamar is a certified interior designer born in the United States and has lived here for over 25 years. She specializes in assisting clients both before and during the purchasing process to help clients understand what they're buying and ensure that the process moves as smoothly as possible. Tamar, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Such a pleasure and welcome to the show. So let's jump right in. And the first question I want to ask you, Tamar. So somebody comes along from abroad, or they could be living here in Israel. They've selected the project that they want. They've been through a whole load of different options and they decided on the project. Then they went through all the units and they decided on the exact unit that they want. Before they go ahead and sign a contract, they need to understand what they're buying. What would you say are the important aspects to check with regards to the unit itself? I'm not talking about the project, I'm talking about the specific unit.
Mm-hmm. That's a great question because I find that sometimes when we look at a plan on paper, when it's a marketing plan, it's not always clear what we're buying. And I'll explain. Because sometimes the size of the furniture on the marketing plan is different from the size of the furniture in real life. It's not to scale. So what you may think you can fit a few beds and a closet and nightstands and a desk in a bedroom, in truth, the room is much smaller than it appears because they made the furniture smaller because it's for promotions. It's for marketing.
You're looking at the paper plans or you could have received them on PDF and they make a bedroom look like you could put two bedrooms in it and you're saying that that could be a little bit misleading and in actual fact, especially when you're bringing furniture from America.
Oh, especially.
All right, it's not going to fit. So what are your recommendations?
So the first thing I would say to do is to get the measurements of the bedroom. The actual measurements, because there's a marketing plan, a PDF plan. It's in PDF format, and they use it for the sale, initial marketing material and the sale. And there's also a more specific plan that's black and white, without the color, without the frills, and it should say the measurements of the space. And you can ask for that.
So the marketing plans, they're not lying. They're just promotional. The measurements are correct, but they may not be accurate. They may be a little bit off, or they may be, as far as I know, they're even allowed to deviate a small amount because when they prepare the marketing materials, they don't always have the final permits, but then the permits are...
Right. They're marketing materials, just like the cookie on the container of the Pesach box always looks better than it actually does when you open it.
That's a great example. Absolutely.
So I would say get the measurements and really make sure that the measurements best represent the space and what you can put in it. Also, keep in mind the measurements are usually in centimeters, not feet and inches. So make sure you take the time to convert and do a quick calculation. How much is my bed? How much is it if I have a king bed? Okay, king size bed. Let's say that's 2 meters, giving you some extra space in case you have a large king. And then you have 2 nightstands. Let's say they're 50 centimeters. That's another meter. So you have 3 meters minimum to fit in what you want. So make sure you have that because you may not actually have that and it may be very misleading, not from a not wanting to be honest point of view, but it may just not best represent what you could do. Another thing I would say in terms of the Mifrat Techni, which you asked about, which you mentioned earlier, Mifrat Techni is a very technical document. A lot of people say, oh, I don't understand Hebrew, so I can't understand this. Even Israelis who speak Hebrew won't necessarily understand it because it's very technical. It's talking technical, like if they're using cement and the building materials and what's involved. So in Israeli...
Tell us a little bit more about it. So there's materials, there are...
It talks about how it's being built, what materials it's being built out of. It talks about your storage space units, your parking, the outlets, the type of outlets you're getting.
The number of outlets.
The number of light points. The important things I'd like to focus on, that I would always recommend to focus on, are air conditioning. Are you getting the preparation for the air conditioning? Or are you getting the actual unit?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they build and they give you preparation, meaning they give you the drainage area or a plug point, but they're not giving you the actual unit. Now, it's important to know this because when it comes to moving in and your budget moving in, you want to know, do I need to now put in an air conditioning unit or do I have one?
I once had a client who bought an apartment. They got the air conditioning unit, but they didn't do the ductwork. So afterwards, they had to have someone come and do what we call in Hebrew the geves, or the drywall, to finish it off. That's a really good point. So you have to find out what are you getting, and then you have to put in your budget, to accommodate for those additional costs.
The understanding of the mifrat techni and the plans is not a matter of, I'm going to move forward with this or no. It's a matter of understanding how to build a budget moving forward and knowing, okay, I'm going to need X amount to get this to the point where I can live in it comfortably to my standards, or not. If you don't have the knowledge and the information from the get-go of what you're buying and how much to what point it will be finished, then it's very difficult to make an accurate projected budget for all of any construction changes you want to do on paper, any upgrades you want to do, or even furniture. If you're planning on doing, once you get the key, if you plan on furnishing the whole thing, if you're planning on doing custom carpentry, buying light fixtures, it's important to know how much to leave for the end. Because you don't want, typically you see people move in Israel to homes and they have a hanging light bulb from a string.
Right.
Electrical cable. Why? Because they didn't budget in time. They didn't budget correctly and they didn't have funds left at the end.
I would say it's not even just about the budget and about the funds. It's just about the expectations. Some people are just in shock that they buy an apartment and there's no air conditioning in it. Nobody told them. Or there are, as you said, strings hanging from the ceiling with a little fixture to put a bulb in.
Right.
So it's about being aware and educating our buyers to understand what exactly they're buying and that there should be no surprises.
Okay, so the air conditioning is one thing. The next thing I would recommend to know is, does your home include a smart home? Because sometimes they'll tell you you're getting a smart home, and that means they're giving part of the outlets as a smart home outlet. Or sometimes it's a full home. But it's important to know what it is, because sometimes I've seen in one project that they gave only a few switches were smart home on one floor. The client then had to either upgrade their whole house, which is a huge expense, to be smart, or keep what they gave you. So it's neither here nor there.
So half a smart home.
Yeah.
Half a smart home.
or take them out, and it's chaval because you're paying for it. You may get a refund, but it was something that they sold you on. So to know that as well. Even something like screens on your windows. Sometimes we assume our home comes with screens. Sometimes don't assume. Check your mifrat technique, because these are all things that you're going to want to know, and you don't want to move in and realize, oh, I can't open my window.
Right. I had a client who once bought an apartment. There were no screens on the windows, but they gave them the hachana for screens. What is the hachana? Hachana is the preparation. And it turns out that in order to put screens on, you need an additional track. So these developers, the builder was very generous and gave them an extra track. For those people that didn't get the extra track, it was really a problem, because they then had to have a whole another thing put in order to accommodate this screen. So again, it's a matter of understanding what you're getting and what you're not getting and preparing yourself. There are a lot of changes that you can make at the early stages that would cost a lot more if you do it later on down the line.
Yes.
And these are not things that we can expect buyers to know on their own. Unless you work in this business or you've done this multiple times, you wouldn't know this.
Right. And also the most cost-efficient time to make the changes is when it's still on paper. Once they start building, or you even get your key and have to rip up a wall to add an outlet or move an outlet, it's just more expensive. And that's a shame, because if you do it early on, you end up saving money.
Let's just go back to the size of the rooms that you mentioned and the walls. So let's say you fall in love with an apartment. Everything about it checks the boxes, but the master bedroom is too small. Is there any way that you can change that?
The builder does allow you to change the configuration of the bedrooms. So there's a few guidelines to that. It depends if it's in an apartment or if it's a home, a private home, or a multifamily unit. There are different situations where you can, and the guidelines differ. Depends how close it is to the mamad, to the safe room. And if it's on a wall that borders it or even across from it, there are all types of guidelines in terms of what you're allowed and not allowed to do. And I always recommend before you start making any changes, speak to them and get the guidelines so you really know that you're working within the rules.
And look at the plans and make sure that the changes you want to make are structurally possible.
Right.
If you're next to the mamad, for example, the safe room, then those walls are non-negotiable. You can't knock those down. If you have a supporting pillar in the wall, usually it's a problem. Sometimes there are ways around it, but these are things that you have to check.
Yeah, you have to check, but there is room to play with it. Typically, the master bedrooms are small, and you can usually find a way to make them bigger. Same with the master bathroom. They make them very small. The master shower is usually 90 on 90. It's small.
And bedrooms and apartments are just getting smaller and smaller, by the way. We're just
to be more and more creative in how to fit it all in.
And that's why some people buy a 4-bedroom apartment and make it into a 3-bedroom apartment. They'll take one of the bedrooms, give half of a bedroom to the master bedroom and another half to one of the children's rooms, for example. It's not ideal, but that's what some people are doing today.
Yeah.
And in terms of the builders accommodating, so I've seen that there are all different types. There are some builders who say, sure, no problem, we'll make changes. Just submit your plans by an interior designer and we'll accommodate. We might charge for the additional materials. You know, if you're only supposed to have 3 meters of walls and now we have 4.5 meters, we'll charge for the extra 1.5 meters of wall. There are those builders that are accommodating. There are some that will say absolutely no changes whatsoever. You can do whatever you like once you get the key. And then you have some in the middle who are, less accommodating. They'll say they'll do it, but it will be more expensive, or, they can only do it under certain circumstances. It really depends. And this, again, you have to ascertain before you move forward. You want to know who you're dealing with and how flexible they are. And if things are super important to you to be done beforehand, then you want to check that out now.
Right. Also, how far along they are in the building. Because if they're further along, if you're buying a little later in the game, then they might have already built it. Some will say, okay, we'll let you do the changes. They're flexible because they want you to buy, and some won't. Or they'll charge you more because now they have to demo and rebuild. So it depends what stage they're in.
Sure. Also, remember, if you're moving walls that are related to water or to the bathroom or the kitchen, you're also dealing with electrical points and water points, and everything just adds up. It's not as simple as just moving a wall. There are other things that are involved in it.
For sure. It's not as simple as moving a wall, because there's also, if you're in an apartment building, for example, you have to connect to their main drains. You can't just do what you want and move a bathroom.
Sure.
So there's a calculation that is done in order to calculate how far away it is, and it always needs to be approved beforehand by the builder. There are plumbing specialists who approve it before you can even move that. But I would say that, and you asked about this before, if someone they have a plan, they have an apartment they like, and the master looks small. Before we determine that it's small, let's determine what we're looking for. And that, I'm sure someone like yourself can advise on what to look for. But if you look for something that really meets your needs, you may have to either go bigger, someplace that has a larger space, or be able to say, okay, we only need 2 bedrooms aside from the master. We can take this third and make it into something else, make it smaller, but then make it into an office, or think creatively. It's important to know how this space is going to be used and have a clear vision for that before buying. And that goes in hand with seeing the plans and understanding the measurements and understanding the dimensions. Because even if someone would just say, oh, I'm going to bring my furniture from abroad, and now you see the size of the bedrooms, it may not make sense. If you're making aliyah to this apartment, or this is going to be an apartment that you're just going to vacation in, like all of those ideas and decisions comes into play when you're designing it. Because if you're bringing furniture, if you have a piece that's very important to you, then you'll find space for it. But if you don't, then sometimes it's worth buying furniture here. And this is dropping to a different topic, but knowing the dimensions of the Israeli furniture, which is built to fit into Israeli homes, is important, because you may say, oh, it won't fit. But then let's see what furniture exists here, and maybe it will fit.
Sure. So it really comes down to, we've mentioned this in the past, and this is life in general. we have this give and take. We're not going to have it all.
Yes.
You can't have it all, but you decide what is most important to you, and then you work around that. Also, I've mentioned this before, and I will mention it over and over again. Got to change our mindset. These apartments in Israel are much smaller than anything that most of us are used to from Chutz La'aretz. Homes are smaller and they are getting smaller. We are finding a way to build more and more and more homes with less and less and less land. So as you can imagine, everything is getting smaller. And this is just the reality. And we have to change our mindset. I couldn't agree more with Tamar. It's not worth bringing furniture from America. It's bigger, it's heavier, it's darker. It's a different. It's just a different style here. Everything is more European, lighter, smaller, and it works better in the homes.
Yes.
If you can buy stuff here, you're probably better off. And it's not as it used to be a lot more expensive to buy things here. I think the gap has closed significantly.
There's a large range of furniture available here, different price points, different qualities.
Do you help people find furniture?
Yes, for sure.
Amazing. So you have suppliers, you know where to go.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And they're
amazing.
even becoming even more, there's a big fear of moving to a new country, especially sometimes Israel, and the customer service and what will happen and the quality. But I've seen huge strides in the customer service and the attention to detail. And you have to know who to work with. Obviously, that goes with everything. But it's not how it used to be. Even when I made Aliyah over 25 years ago, it's not how it used to be. There's a lot of options.
That's really good to hear.
There's even IKEA. I mean,
even IKEA. That's right. It's great. Okay. Fantastic. What about windows and doors? Are windows negotiable? In terms of their position or their
So in the
style?
first meeting with the building coordinator, they always give you the guidelines of what you can do and what you can't do. Windows, you definitely cannot do. You
cannot move them.
No, because the windows are all part, if it's an apartment building or private home, they're permits from the city that they're building in. So those are something that are pre-approved. You cannot change them. So
unless you ask for specific permission and then you have to go apply for a permit.
Maybe in a private home. I doubt it if you're building in a project.
Not an apartment, right.
Apartment for sure not. I doubt it. Because even when you're building inside a city, they don't let you move a window. You could add a window in an extension, maybe, but you can't really move windows.
Otherwise the whole building's going to look different. Yes. It's going to change the whole look and feel. What about the style of windows?
So windows is something you really can't touch in this type of project. The windows stay the same. Where they are, the type of windows, how they open, all stays the same. If you want to change it afterwards, that's a different story.
Right. It's so interesting. I noticed that there are fashions, right? Even windows. I mean, when we bought our home in Modi'in, all the homes had this like gold green kind of frame, aluminum frame. And then everything turned to gray. Everybody has gray. And now it's like black or close to black. So what's the next style that's coming up?
Yeah, I don't know.
So we can't really play with those.
No.
It used to be, and by the way, before we bought, everything was white. People used to have like the white frames.
Right.
So I find it interesting to see fashion even in homes.
Yeah, and even if you want to change it afterwards, you would still have to see the same color, typically.
Right. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the kitchen and the bathrooms. What are we looking at when we are making sure that this is the right unit?
Okay, so the Kablan, the contractor will give you what's called a Kablan kitchen. It's a standard kitchen. Typically, it's from a lower quality of material. Depending if it's a project geared towards religious, it'll have 2 sinks. Otherwise, it has 1 sink. It'll have a little bit of upper cabinets and lower cabinets.
And like a hole to put an oven in, a microwave.
Yeah, an area for a fridge and an area for an oven.
A built-in oven.
Yes.
And microwave.
An Israeli size oven.
European appliances.
A few things to look at is to know that when you're buying from a project, you're not able to go wherever you want to shop. They always tell you who you have to go to. So they pre-select a few suppliers for the floors, for the tiles, for the toilets, for the sinks, for the kitchen, for the doors, for everything. It's pre-selected. And then you have to choose from their suppliers. Now, when it comes to kitchen, for example, you'll usually have 1 to 2 companies that you can choose from. You're given the option to upgrade.
At one of those places.
Now, when you go to upgrade, when you go to make a change, if it's a builder who's a little bit more flexible, sometimes they'll say, okay, you just add the cost of what you bought, what you upgraded to.
Like you get a credit.
No. Some builders will say, okay, you are just adding to the kitchen I gave you.
So you just pay for that.
Okay. Typically what happens is they say, okay, you made 1 change or you're not doing exactly what we're giving you. You now we're going to give you a credit and then plan your kitchen from the beginning. That credit is not what a kitchen costs. It is far, far lower for a number of reasons. One of them being that when a kablan purchases in bulk, you get a better rate. Let's leave it at that in terms of why it is. It's a whole other thing. But now you have to plan a kitchen from zero, from the beginning. You have more flexibility in terms of materials, in terms of layout, in terms of finishes and styles. You'll still have to work within the guidelines that the builder gave you, meaning sometimes they'll let you move the kitchen to the other side of the room. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes even moving a sink is a problem. So you have to keep that in mind and work hand in hand and know ahead of time what the builder will allow you to do so that you don't waste your time and everybody else's time and energy planning something that you can't do in the end.
Right. So again, you really want to think about what kind of kitchen you want before you get started. Yeah. What if you don't want a kitchen from either of these two suppliers? You want to go to your own private carpenter or your kitchen place that you've selected? What do you do?
In that situation, you ask the kablan, will I be able to install my kitchen after I get my key? They won't let anyone from outside of their project into the site. So you have to ask them.
And then you ask if you, I'm sure that they will allow you, once you get your keys, you can get, the question is, will they give you a credit for what you're not taking?
You'll get a credit. You get a credit for what you're not taking. You have to, but they have to allow it. Because you then, at that same point that you would be normally planning your kitchen for the project, you have to plan it wherever you're going to do it. Because the kablan will still need to prepare the water and the electric and the gas and everything that you need so that when you move in, it's all there. Because like you mentioned before, sometimes the water and electric, not sometimes, always, it goes through the floor. You're not going to rip up tile and start redoing that. It doesn't make sense. It's not the smart way to work. Also, if you know ahead of time that you want an American oven, so you may need a different type of electrical plug for that. That prep needs to be already be in the luach hashmal, in the electric board. So they have to know, you have to have a lot of information from the beginning so that you do it.
You do it right.
You do it right. And also it's more cost efficient. But there's a lot of, the order that these things happen in these kind of projects is a little bit counterintuitive. You think, oh, I'm getting my key in 3 years. I have plenty of time. You don't, because everything has to be done, selected, planned, purchased very early on because it needs to be ready for them. They're not only focusing on your home, they're focusing on a lot of other ones. So
makes sense.
So everything has to be planned even earlier. So if it's the kitchen, if you're not going to take it from the kablan and you're going to do it after, you still have to plan it then. And the kitchen company still needs to prepare the plans and give it to the kablan in time. You're given from the beginning a whole bunch of information. You're given the suppliers that you have to work with, your deadlines, and your guidelines for what you're allowed to use and what you're not allowed to use in terms of your selections. For example, in the bathrooms, the kablan will give you a list of where you go and you buy. You always have to buy it from one of their stores. You can't split your order between a few stores. So it's always, I recommend going to all of them, taking a look, getting an idea of what you like, the styles that you like, and that you see that they're offering. Because even when they say, okay, you have to work with our vendors, inside of those suppliers and vendors is what's called the standard. Even in Hebrew, they say standard. Whenever you don't know a building term, think what language is it really in? Hebrew, English, German is a big one. Also, a lot of the construction words are in German and Arabic. The standard is the pre-selected tiles and sinks, faucets, toilets, cabinets in the bathrooms and the main floor that the kablan has pre-selected that are included in the cost. So when you go look at all of the different vendors, ask to see the standard to know, okay, this is what each vendor is giving me in the standard. And based on that, you pick where you want to go.
Right. So I will say there was a time, I'd say about 15, 20 years ago, where almost every project that was being built, they had a dira ledugma, a model apartment. And you could literally walk through, you got a sense of how the apartment looked. And they had the kitchen, standard kitchen, and standard tiles, bathrooms, and you really could get a sense of what you were buying. And not only did they have like the tiles put down, but they showed you a choice of 4 or 5, 6 tiles. And similarly, like the backsplash and the different doors, it was all there. Today, not only do they not have a showroom, almost everything now is digital or 3D renditions. They won't even tell you who the suppliers are until you have signed your contract. It's very, very difficult to get that information. So you're not really going to be able in most cases to go and see what they're offering And you basically have to assume that you're getting standard. And the truth is that the standard is, by definition, it's standard and more or less all of the builders, unless you're looking at a very, very high-end project, that will more or less within a range of a certain like quality.
Yeah.
And if you want something better, then you are going to have to upgrade.
Right.
So going back to what we were looking at, so tiles and floors are a little bit out of our control at this point. I want to focus more on understanding what we're buying so that we don't look back afterwards and say, if only I'd have known, because these are not changeable. Even tiles and bathrooms, these things are changeable down the line. I remember years ago, a friend of mine asked me to help her sister. Her sister was purchasing a home. It was actually in Buchmann in Modi'in. And she loved the fact that they gave this apartment with marble floors and a jacuzzi in the master bathroom. And she was weighing it between that apartment and a house that was much more of a standard finish. And she asked me my opinion, what should she do? And they were maybe about 70,000 shekel difference. We're talking about $20,000 now. At the time, it was even less than that. And I said, hands down, go for the house, because the things you're talking about, the marble floors and the jacuzzis, are purely aesthetic. They wear and tear, and within 10, 15, 20 years, they're going to have to be replaced. You can't change the fact that it's an apartment and not a house. You can't change the fact that the house has a garden and the apartment doesn't. There are certain things that are not changeable. And they went ahead and bought the apartment. And about 3 years later, she came and said, we want to sell it. How much will it cost to upgrade? And that's 70,000 shekels multiplied. And between you and me and everyone else that's listening, they're still in that same apartment. Mm-hmm. So the point is that I think it's really, really important when you're buying to look at things that are not going to change with time. The layout of the apartment, the directions, the view, the view can change if something's built in front, but if you're, and I always tell people do not buy something for view unless you're on the first line to the sea. And what else? What else can we look at to make sure that we understand what we're buying?
If you see a mirpeset balcony, for example, I would definitely ask, is this a mirpeset sukkah? Is it a sukkah balcony or is it a regular balcony? Is there something, what's above it? Because also, if you're planning on coming for sukkahs, using this as your, home for chagim in Israel, mm-hmm. and you now bought a apartment that you can't have a sukkah on, that would be a really frustrating thing. Also, how much storage you're given, because that doesn't always appear on the plans mm-hmm. when they show it to you. To know, do I have a storage unit? Where is the storage unit? How close is it? Because maybe you were told, oh, you have a storage unit, and you're planning, once you saw the kitchen size, to have another refrigerator in the storage unit while the storage unit is in the basement. Well, you're not carrying soup Friday night. Right. To the right. Other. So to know where your storage unit is, and also your parking. How many parking spots do I have? Where are they located? How close are they? That's an important thing to understand.
Mm-hmm. So tell us, Tamar, at what point should a buyer contact you and bring you into the picture?
Mm-hmm. I always recommend 2 parts. First, right before you want to sign, just to have another look over. Make sure what you are looking to do, how you expect to live, your lifestyle, and what you want in your home is possible.
Okay.
Even what you're imagining. Oh, I'm going to knock this wall down. I'm going to put this in. Make sure it's possible.
So the client engages with you and then sends you the plans,
yes.
sends you the mifrat techni, the technical specifications. You go through everything.
Yes.
You do it like on Zoom. You do it
on Zoom.
Okay.
And I like to have them fill out a survey before, so I have an understanding of what they're looking to do. How do they plan on using it? How many people are going to live in their home? How old are they? What are their plans for the next 20 years? Are they planning on flipping, or are they planning on living in it? 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? It's important to understand that, because our needs change as we age. So take that and their plans, and we go over their mifrat techni, explain to them what they're getting, things that they should ask or clarify that aren't clear there, or that I think they should ask for.
Right.
Look, when it's a big project, you don't have that much wiggle room. It's just about knowledge and educating yourself to what you're buying. You're
making aware, right?
Yeah.
But the truth is, if you realize at this point that there's certain things that you would like, it doesn't do any harm to try and negotiate them in. You still mm-hmm. have bargaining power. Yep. Once you've signed the contract, it's too late. Again, this is pre-legal stage.
Yeah.
Go ahead and ask for those extra points or those extra features that you want.
And I also explain to them the plans, because not everyone knows how to read a plan, especially a plan in a foreign country.
Right.
what a window looks like from above. Because remember, plans that we received are from above. What a window looks like, what the door looks like. And know, the bathroom is now planned for a room without a window. Is that something that bothers you?
Super important.
And is it something that could be fixed? Sometimes it's fixable, sometimes it's not. You have to look at
what
the
happens
plans.
when there's no window in a bathroom?
They usually put in a vent. I mean, they put in a vent.
Right.
Sometimes you could reconfigure the bathroom to kind of move things around, but it depends on the apartment and if you could do that.
When I show somebody plans, I always try and position the plan that we're kind of walking through the front door. Walk through the front door and look what you see straight away. Look to your right, look to your left, look straight ahead, and how much light, how much air, and obviously how big are the how spacious are the
flow.
spaces.
You want to make sure the flow makes sense and isn't a weird flow.
So this, is a super important service that you don't need to get, but it would certainly add a lot of value. Do you ever have people who come along and say, we're mitlaptim, we're like deciding between 2 or 3 different units. Can you help us figure out or compare, contrast so that we make the right decision?
No, but I wish they did, because sometimes there are things that I can pick up on, or any of my esteemed colleagues can pick up on, that you just didn't realize by looking at it. Because we look at plans all day long, our understanding of them is very different. So therefore, if that was brought to me, if people are deciding between 2, there's so many pros and cons of each that I can identify for them, and solutions at the same time.
Right,
so it really definitely is something. So I would recommend speaking at that point, and then again, right after they sign.
Now, what happens if clients are not here? Most people do come here to shop for an apartment. That's a pretty big purchase, and I believe if they can, they should. During the COVID days, it was more common for people to buy remotely. I'm not a big fan, but if that's the only way that you can do it, then certainly. Right. So what happens if clients are not here? Are you able to help them remotely?
Of course. You mentioned COVID. This is what I did COVID. I had clients who are abroad who couldn't come, and everything had to be selected via Zoom.
And it could be done that way.
It can be done. It's not ideal.
It's not ideal.
Because color doesn't come through on a screen. I see that when I'm even in a showroom taking a picture with a client right next to me, and we see how the color doesn't come through, but everything else you could do on Zoom. That's what I do. When we look at a project, we try to establish when the client should come, when they should be here to do those shopping days, and plan it out, book the appointments, have them ready to go. So the second they land, we're ready to do it. But the rest can be done over Zoom easily.
So that's actually really important, that before people sign, they have to already have some kind of a time frame schedule to know when decisions have to be made by and what they have to do, what their priorities are.
Yeah.
So we're at the point now where we have been through the plans, we understand what we're getting, we understand the flow of the apartment, we have hopefully negotiated a few extra items into the technical specifications, and we've now handed over the work to our lawyer.
Can I give some tips of what to negotiate for?
This is what we're here for, please.
Okay, so if you want to know what can you negotiate, because negotiating screens when there aren't screens, I don't know if you'd be so successful, because they're ordering in bulk and they're not going to want to make your prep different than other prep. But
you can ask. You can
always ask. They call it shitat matzliach in Israel. The approach of success, I guess you could translate it as ask. It doesn't hurt to ask. You never know if they're going to say yes.
100%.
But things to ask for would definitely be extra electric points and extra light points.
If you don't ask for them and you have to put them in afterwards,
they cost
a lot of money to put in. And sometimes they won't even let you put them in.
Yeah. For example, if I'm looking around the room right now, Israeli standard is one electric point. And we always need a splitter. You get one. So you could say, I want a few more doubles.
Right.
You could ask for, if you know you're going to want an American oven, ask for what's called a 3-phase, a flat phase. Is it included? No? Okay. Put that in. I'm going to get an American oven. That's savings. Lights. Maybe your bathroom light comes with only one light on top and you want a light by the mirror for makeup, for everything.
Sure.
Ask for 2 lights in the bathroom.
Or recessed lighting or something. Yeah. On the balcony as well, do you want to get a gas point and a water point?
Yes. Right. Gas.
You would think that they give that automatically.
No,
and they don't.
They don't give gas automatically. Also, in terms of the Mifrat Techni, some apartment buildings don't have gas. So if you're planning,
that's really important.
If it's important to you to cook with with a gas stove, make sure the building has gas. Is it a deal breaker? No, but will you be disappointed when you have to plan your kitchen? Probably.
Again,
so you want to know.
It's a matter of you want to know what you're buying.
Yeah.
It's not
setting expectations.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Also, in terms of the mirpesset, gas, water, sometimes you can do a sink, sometimes you can't. But you may also want an extra light points or a split so you could do a fan if it's a sukkah. So to ask for those things, lights, so electric and water points also, are you getting, once you understood your mifrat techni, if you're getting the word everyone loves, the interputs. Is it a 3-way? Is it a 4-way? Is it a 5-way?
Well, explain that. What is an interput?
Interputs is referring, I said before how the words come from different places. I think this is German, if I'm not correct. A splitter. A split?
Like for the
water.
A faucet splitter.
Yeah, for the shower. They have, it's very hard to describe when you're not looking at it in front of you. A shower comes with hot, cold, or shower or bathtub comes with hot and cold water. So that's 2 points. Then the 3-way means one out point. So a 3-way would be just a shower head or just a bathtub filler. 4-way would be shower and bathtub that you pull to switch between.
When you go to a hotel, I know when I took a shower in a hotel, it takes a few minutes to figure out what it is before I get burned alive or frozen.
Yeah. Sometimes, depending on how you configure your plumbing, you may want it to be 2 different things or 1 unit. So just to know if you're getting a 3 or a 4, sometimes you could say, okay, can you upgrade this to a 4?
Right.
And that's savings down the line.
I would say also smart, that you mentioned before, smart house. So they may be giving you points that are smart, and then you can ask for more.
Mm-hmm. If you know you're going to be upgrading your...
if you know you're upgrading...
your air conditioning, for example. If you know that what they're giving you is not what you want, you could say, okay, can you give me more... Air conditioning divides into a few things. It's electric, water for the draining of the electric, and copper. There's a copper pipe that needs to be placed in a certain area. So you can ask, okay, can you give me more points and not charge me for them in terms of the electric prep, plumbing prep, and the copper. So maybe that's something also you can ask for them to do.
Sure. 2 other things that just came to mind. One is the size of the tiles. It used to be when we bought our home, they did us a big favor and gave us, I think it was 60 by 60 square tiles, 60 centimeters square. Everything obviously is in centimeters, is the metric system. Today, we're talking 80, 90, 100, even 110. Sometimes 120 square meters, and the bigger square centimeters, and the bigger the tiles, the more expensive they are. So if they offer you 70, 80 centimeter tiles, tell them you want 100.
Even in negotiating that, sometimes the larger tiles, they not only charge you because the tiles are larger, but they also charge you an extra fee for laying them, and because it sometimes also needs they need certain types of material to move them, equipment to move them. And the prep is sometimes different. So if you know ahead of time, I want really large tiles, tell them that maybe you can negotiate that they... At
least the labor won't charge you more for that.
Yeah.
Right. It's very important. The more you know up front what you want, the more you can ask for and negotiate into the price. And even if they don't give it to you for free, you can get it at a fixed price that is not going to go up later on. Something else I was thinking about was the dud shemesh. I don't know how to translate that into English, but that
water
is
heater.
The water heater, the tank that's on the roof or in the attic that is connected to the solar panels that heats the water. A lot of people today actually, they don't have the dud shemesh. They either have, or what do they call it?
The yunker.
Yeah. And now I see a lot of people have even solar panels for the entire house. That's a whole nother discussion, which maybe we'll talk about one day. So what do we see on the Mifrat Techni? What are we looking at? And what should we be asking for, if anything?
So the Mifrat Techni will say that. It will say what you're getting. And if it's a dud shemesh, if it's solar heated, if there's a possibility for yunker, and you could ask that. If it doesn't and you want the yunker either runs on gas or electric. But if it's an apartment building especially, it's something that they have to prepare for you to be able to do. So you can
every apartment has their own tank.
Yes.
And it also describes or details the size of the tank.
Yes.
And that, I think, is where you can negotiate. If you have a big family, like Erev Shabbat, you're going to have a lot of people taking showers and your tank. That's where you can try and negotiate as well.
Another thing, you mentioned Shabbat, a Shabbos clock in your electric panel.
But if you have a smart house, then everything's...
It depends if they're giving you the full smart house or not. And if they're not, then you can ask to get a Shabbat clock in your electric box. Not all apartments come with it.
Right, that's right. And talking about Shabbat, the windows today, most apartments have electrical trissim. The blinds are electrical, which is wonderful. But on Shabbat, it's a problem if you want to raise them or lower them. So again, if you have a smart house, all this is pre-programmed and you can tell the system exactly what time you want the shades to go up and go down.
They have the old style Shabbat clocks for Trisim.
Right.
So you can also do that.
Again, you have to either install on Shabbat a timer, or what you can also do is you can ask the builder to give you something called a manuela. Don't ask me what language that is, but it comes
manual.
Exactly. It comes from the word manual, and it's literally a rod with a handle at the end. Manual handle, I don't know. And you crank it up and crank it down. On Friday night after the Friday night dinner, we have one of our sons is always the designated manuela, and that's another way to deal with that. But even that, you have to decide that, and you have to request it during the construction phase, because you can't just add a manuela on. It has to be installed into the system, the tris system, when they're putting in the windows.
I think it's typically included because for safety, you can't only rely on electric.
So from what my understanding is there's always the mechanism there, but they don't give you the rod. So we don't take anything for granted. And I think, you know what, if we're going to come away with one takeaway here, it's don't take anything for granted. Don't make assumptions. Don't assume anything. Ask for everything, and please get it in writing.
Yes.
And very importantly, when everything's been agreed upon, give that list to your lawyer to make sure that it's included, because you can do a great job of negotiating, but they may quickly forget and it will be left out.
I always recommend, in life, but especially in these projects, every meeting that you have with them, send a summary by email. This is what we discussed. This is what you agreed to, and have them confirm.
Excellent.
Not only because we don't trust people, but because we're human and they're seeing a lot of people, you're dealing with a lot of people, and so much time will pass until you get your key. It'll be very difficult to remember what you said, what they said, what everyone agreed on. So always in this process, always email it to them, have it in writing, and have a very clear, it seems silly, but a very clear subject line. So that you know exactly when you have to pull it up to refer to it, that it's all very clear, because it takes time until you get your key. It's not something that happens tomorrow. And you want to make sure that they remember and you remember and everything is very clear.
Excellent.
Because it gets
very, very, very well said. Okay, so we have decided now on the unit, and we feel more confident. We understand what we're buying, we understand what we're getting and what we're not getting. There are no surprises. And we're now ready to engage with an attorney and hand over to him to manage the next process, which is taking us to contract. As soon as we have a signed contract in our hands, there's a lot of work to be done. This is not...
The work is just getting started.
The work is just getting started. And if you think you've come on a vacation, you're gonna have to do quite a bit of work, but it will be worth it. We're not going to spend too much time on what happens in this stage, because next week we're going to talk about the legal aspects. And after that, we're going to talk about project management throughout the construction phase. But Tamar, this is something that I know that is a big part of your job, because as you said, you work with buyers both before they purchase and helping them through the process. So why don't you just give us a little bit of a summary of what you do over the next few months and what's entailed in this process?
Sure. Once a client signs and they decide that they want to move forward with making changes.
Well, once they've signed, they've decided.
No, move forward with making changes.
I see.
Some people sign in there, they say, okay, whatever we get, we get. You don't have to make changes.
That's an important point. Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah. Some people sign and they say, yeah, we're happy. We'll take the standard. It's fine. But even those people, they still have a minimal number of choices, and it would be almost a shame to let somebody else make those decisions for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Whether you make changes or not, you still have to decide on the kitchen. You still have to decide on the tiles.
And sign off on it.
Somebody
has to sign off on it.
Yes. So once you decide you want to move forward with making changes and that you need help or assistance in doing so, the first things that you should do is get a list from the kablan, from the contractor, the dates. Dates are crucial because now you know how much stress you have in your life, or you have a little bit more time and you have an idea of how to plan your time. If you live abroad, those dates are very important because you want...
Who gives those dates? Like at the signing, will they give you the dates? Or
Not always. It depends on the project and how organized they are. It depends how far along they are in the building. Some projects, they will give you a login and you can see it all on your login area and you can see it all there. And sometimes you have to ask for the dates and the guidelines. Sometimes they're stressed out and they're under a lot of pressure, so they'll make sure you know it. But if not, you have to ask, what's the timeline? What are my due dates? When do I have to hand things in?
Most developers have like a dedicated person for
Yes.
Shinui Dayarim or for managing buyers who are going through the process right now, as opposed to those residents who've already moved into the apartments.
Yeah. Her title is Meta'emet Shinui Dayarim. You may hear that word a lot when you start. So to know Meta'emet Shinui Dayarim, the person who coordinates the building changes.
Wonderful.
They'll give you the access information to that. If it's online or if it's through her, you get that information from them in terms of the timelines. Also, who the suppliers are. That's the second question to get. Who are the suppliers? Where do you go for your kitchen? Where are they located in the country? I mean, we're a small country, but there's still space in between each one.
Sure.
So ideally, they're located all in the same area, and it makes your life a lot easier. Right. Sometimes they're spread out between Yerushalayim. I've seen Yerushalayim, Beit Shemesh, and D-City in Ma'ale Adumim.
Rishon LeZion.
Rishon. No, in one project.
Oh, in one project. Oh, my goodness. Wow.
So you want to really know where they are so that you know how to plan your time.
You said if somebody's coming from abroad, you would go with your clients to these places?
Yes. Oh, of course. So to know your timeline, who the suppliers are, and then you need to get from them what's called the DWG file. It's the file, the AutoCAD file that they share with the designer that we can then work on and make all of the changes. Additionally, they always have time in their schedule that you have to book to get the hanchayot, to get the guidelines. So first thing I do once I get this information from my client and we're ready to move forward, I schedule a call with the Meta'emet Shinui Dayarim to get the guidelines, the rules. You want to know the rule book. You want to know what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do, because it really affects the next stages and what you can plan.
Sure.
You don't want to plan something and then be told you can't do it, because every time you give in a change for a plan, it costs money. Every change you make costs, and it takes time to make these changes and on paper. That's why we're talking about buying on paper. It takes time even to make those, and you don't want to waste their time and your time planning something you can.
Sure. So part of your service is also you're coordinating all these various meetings, making sure that the clients in the limited time that they're in Israel, that they manage to meet with all the various different suppliers and all the people that are part of this chain, so that nothing is left out. What about when they're abroad and one of these the suppliers have to reach them? Are you a contact?
I'm always the contact.
I see.
For a few reasons. One, they're abroad. Two, the Hebrew. It's very technical. They want to be able to speak to someone who could answer. So I'm always the client's contact when they're abroad. And I handle all of the back and forth with emails and WhatsApps with the suppliers. Ideally, there was one project I worked on, and this is just such a funny situation, that I was working on it for 3 years. It started during COVID and my clients couldn't come. So I talked to them every day. We worked on Zoom a ton and everything. And the project progressed and it kept progressing. And I've spoken to them and I never met them. 3 years in, I met them for the first time. And we did a whole week of shopping. And it was so funny because you get to know people so intimately. You know how they plan to live, how many kids they plan on having. You know all this information about them, but you've never met them.
Unbelievable.
And then you go and spend a week shopping with them. It was a very surreal experience.
Well, that's also a very important point. And that is that there's a lot of chemistry here. You're working very closely with people, and people are working under pressure, under stress, with a limited time and limited budget.
Yeah.
And I can see your personality. You're so calm and organized, and I'm sure that really adds to it. So look, time has really run away. We could carry on talking for hours and hours. And please God, we'll have you back to continue talking with us in the future. Before we end, Tamar, I want to know where in Israel do you live and why?
Ooh, that's a great question. I live in Modi'in. I love it here. I find that it's such a great central location to Israel, to go anywhere you want to go to. And I love the community here. I think even since COVID, we've seen so many Ulim coming here, and it's something. I have a special place in my heart for Olim. I came as a teenager and went through.
Where did you come from?
I came from Florida.
Wow. And you went to?
We went to Ma'ale Adumim.
Beautiful.
So I remember what it was like for my parents, who they bought on paper, my parents. And I remember seeing this whole process through their eyes.
So interesting.
How much trauma.
If only there was someone like you to help them.
I feel like it's my tikkun in life that I'm helping other people, because I remember my parents doing this and having no idea what was happening.
Beautiful. Well, I've said this before and I'll say it again. And I really feel that everybody who's in this business and all the people that I bring on the show, we are all here to help.
Yes.
Making Aliyah is not easy. Buying a home in a foreign country is very different from anywhere else. And we're here to help. And that really is the purpose of this podcast, to educate, to guide, and to give you as much information as possible to make this that little bit easier. And finally, Tamar, if you were to move somewhere else in the country, where would you go and why?
I'd probably move somewhere near the ocean, near the sea, not the ocean, near the sea on the beach. I think I would move there because I like being in nature. Even though I'm an interior designer, that I spend my time focusing on interiors, I love being outside.
Beautiful.
So I'd want to definitely move someplace I could be outside.
Give us a place. Come on.
I don't want people to think I'm leaving tomorrow.
We know you're not leaving. But if you were able to,
Caesarea, probably.
Caesarea. Beautiful. Very nice. Wow. So thank you so much, Tamar. This has been a really, really enjoyable, insightful, and important session. And I'm going to leave Tamar's contact information in the show notes if anybody wants to reach her. I'm sure she'll be very happy to help you. And I know from personal experience, she is an absolute pleasure and a dream to work with. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We'll see you again. Thank you for listening to On the House. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and share it with your family and friends. You can also visit buyitisrael.com, where you can find news, market updates, guidance, and much more on real estate in Israel. That's Buy It in Israel, BUYIT in Israel.com. If you have a question or a specific topic you'd like us to cover on this podcast, please email us at the address you'll find at the bottom of the show notes. Whether you're thinking about Aliyah, looking for a home or a haven, or wanting to support the Israeli economy, now is the time to buy it in Israel.